try this in your personal life. Just go for no in your personal life. Like when you're out somewhere or when the opportunity arises. I remember I was at Walmart and I got to the front to the cashier and I hadn't heard a no in a long time. Like I hadn't been practicing. I hadn't been going for no. I said, so are there any like coupons or discounts? I swear the cashier looked like she was going to jump over the counter and strangle me. She goes, "You're at Walmart." And I went, "You're right. Okay. All right. Here's my credit card. I'm leaving."
Hey, Warners, welcome to another episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About.
The podcast that makes business sexy again.
I'm Gina Tramarco, Master Sales Trainer and the Director of Coaching Programs at Sales Gravy.
I'm Rachel Pitts. I'm a Master Sales Coach at Sales Gravy and creator of Your Ultra Fit Lifestyle.
Welcome, welcome. Another fun episode. Love this. This is kind of a... what is the word I'm looking for? It's a spillover. That's a spillover from Outbound. So now we're starting to interview guests we couldn't get on the show before Outbound just because we're so busy. And now we brought on another guest that we got to meet in person. I think Rachel was super excited because
this I think is the first sales leader that we've had on that I actually have.
You got the business crush.
I've got the business crush.
Yeah.
I say in this podcast that I was hesitant to actually reach out to Andrea prior to Outbound because I just thought she was so unreachable. And in my mind, she and her husband, Richard, who they co-authored the book Go for No together. I read this book a long time ago and I thought, this is just somebody that's so unattainable and she'll never answer me. And I looked at her picture, like, look how amazing she looks in her picture. And I mean, she's so down to earth.
So
she has such humility and so sweet and very intelligent, and she's just fantastic. And I'm feel honored to know her and that she joined us today.
Yeah. And I love the way the episode opens, and you guys have to listen to it because I kind of put her on the spot a little bit. But I thought it was appropriate. And what I put her on the spot about, we all have this problem, I think. So it was cool to dive into that. Again, co-author of Go for No, which they wrote in 2000. And I think you're going to I love the story about what happened with that book. So let's just not tell them anything else and have them listen to this episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About. Oh, sponsored by Sales Gravy with Andrea Waltz. We're so excited to have you. Rachel and I met you for the first time at Outbound, and we think you're amazing. We've heard rave reviews from our own clients about you, and we wanted to have you on the show, so we're super excited to have you here today.
Well, I am glad to be with you guys. We had so much fun as a group on stage at Outbound.
Oh, it was so much. Oh, it was such a good experience. It was our first experience there, so for us, it was like, we were awestruck by it.
It was a lot of fun. I will actually say, Andrea, I read Go for No several years ago, actually. So I already knew about you. And I was like, oh, Richard and Andrea are like rock stars because I had read Go for No. It was suggested to me. I had a network marketing business at that time. And there's a lot of network marketing folks that are all about the Go for No. So I have owned your book a lot longer than I knew about Outbound.
Yay. You know, we are very lucky that book has done so well. And I hear that a lot. And then I'm always nervous to disappoint people when they finally meet me.
No.
I'm like, oh no, they read the book so long ago. I better say something clever or wise.
Oh, you just opened a door for conversation with that.
I know. We can talk about that.
Yeah, Rachel, were you going to say something?
I wanted to say, I'm trying to remember who was it that gave me feedback at Outbound that was commenting on our live podcast there, the episode that you were involved in, Andrea. And that individual said, you know, of all those people on the stage, and obviously I was out apparently, he said, that Andrea looked like, she seemed like the person I'd want to sit down and have a conversation with the most.
Oh, Well, how nice. I'm feeling so good now.
It's always good to get
thank you.
Good feedback that it's all true, man.
Yeah.
It's real deal. Like that's what the person said. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll be sure to tell her that.
So a little props for you, but let's dial back just a little bit, a swish, because you said something about not wanting to disappoint people.
I know. Oh gosh, you guys. Are you guys trying to save me money on therapy?
Well, we hear this show is very therapeutic, and people are often here on the couch with us. So we're not therapists, but we play it on the podcast.
Yeah, I know. All right. I opened the door. I deserve this. Well, I have to say, okay, so the book has been out since 2000. That's when we wrote it. We wrote it in 2000. We, before Amazon was even in existence. It was, of all of the things that we were teaching and training at the time, Go for No was the message that resonated with people the most. And so we decided we would write that book, and it did nothing. We struggled with it. We ended up having to change the cover, which is a whole other story that we could talk about. But it finally kind of broke through in 2008, 2009, and then became a bestseller on Amazon in the sales category in 2010. So I like to say it was a 10-year overnight success. But so because of that, and because it's been around for so long, like Rachel, hearing you say, you had read it a few years ago, I do hear that a lot. And so I can't help but think, like, sometimes people get this persona, I think, in their head about an author / speaker or whatever. And that I know I have. And so it's like, they say never meet your heroes. so I'm always like, when people come up and they say like, oh, I read your book, a few years ago, it's amazing. And it's so amazing. And it was life-changing and all these things. And I'm just standing there like, all right. I hope meeting me is as life-changing as the book. Probably not. That's okay though. It shouldn't be.
There's so much to do with that. So much to do with that. Because of everything that you talk about and write about, especially Go for No and failure and rejection, I think this is a recurring theme for anybody and everybody, of feeling less than. I don't know how to put it.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own like inner rock stars, right? There are people who are watching all of us, and we're being watched at different levels. And there's somebody who admires each one of us. We have many admirers, everybody. I'm not just talking about us because we're doing what we do or have a podcast, but I think people are always watching. And then we're astounded to find out people are watching. And we're like, oh gosh, they're watching.
Right. That is very true. Well, I think you have the two sides, right? You have the one is that imposter syndrome of I shouldn't be here, and then there's the kind of the quote unquote I've made it, now I need to keep it / prove that I deserve to be here side of it.
Yeah. I have a little bit of a theory behind that with imposter syndrome in general, or with not leveling up. I've had this problem where it's the fear of success.
Yes.
Of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that next big thing and it's going to be amazing. And then there's going to be an expectation that I do the next big thing, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to do it.
Right.
So maybe I should play small. Like, this is an internal conversation I have with myself. I don't know about either one of you.
There's a whole book on that you should get.
Which one is that one?
That's called The Big Leap. It's called.
I was just going to say that. Yes.
He talks all about it. It's really good. And it's a thing that people do, that what you just described, Gina, that exact thing. It's all in the book. Just get it.
It's all in the book. I think your name's even in the book. They say.
They're like, perfect.
Gina could be so much more if she would bust through the ceiling.
Right.
But I think it's true that a lot of people do that. And what's so beautiful about your and Richard's book, Andrea, is that it's so very simple. And all of these types of crucial things are so simple. Just what's the worst that can happen if somebody tells you no? And yet we're terrified of it, because it goes back to that whole, acceptance in the tribe and like rejection and all the things.
Right.
it's just so terrifying. I've gotten better at no over the years, and just for various reasons. And I'll tell you a really quick story on what happened to me with no today.
Ooh, good.
Ooh, this is fresh.
It's incredible. So I am acquiring a dance studio, which I've wanted to do for 10 years. And so here we are. And this week, I've been at the studio this morning since like 8:30, and I've been teacher and secretary and all the things. Just, it was insane. And my very last class, there was a little girl there and her brother was there. And somebody said, "Oh, Jamie's taking class." And I was like, "Yes, we have a boy." And I kind of like pushed the sister aside. "Oh, it's a boy, Jamie." And he's like, "No, Jamie's my sister." And I was like, "Oh, well, are you taking ballet?" And he's like, "I don't know." I said, "Will you take ballet with us? Because do you have something else to do? You're just going to wait for your sister. Why don't you take ballet?" And he was like, "Okay." And he said yes. Like, I didn't really expect him to say yes. I was just like, "Please come." But he did. And these children made me I literally was crying right when I left to come over here to see you guys, because he had such a good time. And I smashed the stigma for this little boy that ballet is for girls only. And he, not only did he do really great, he excelled. And he tried to give me a tip because I'm the best dance teacher ever. His mom was like,
a cash tip?
Well, his mom was buying dance clothes for them, for the girl, because we just had girl. And he was the one that like presented the credit card, and he asked his mom if he could leave a tip for me because I'm the best dance teacher in the world. And I literally was like crying, but it all came down to just asking.
Oh my gosh.
I expected him to say no, like, but once he was in there, it opened up opportunity for me to tell him about the fact that a lot of football players take ballet. And the reason for that is because it helps with their footwork and their flexibility and all the things. And now he understands that it's not just for girls. And at the end of class, he said, "I've decided I'm taking ballet now."
I love that
incredible.
story. Oh my gosh, that is incredible.
It is incredible.
What I love about that story too, Rachel, is that you did go for no, which is in that moment you kind of had this paradigm shift where all of a sudden you were, you realized, oh, Jamie is the sister. And then, but like undeterred, you, right? You were like, "Oh no, let me ask this little boy." And what's so great is normally we think about the benefits to the asker, right? The person who's doing the asking because they want something. But in this case, you having the insight and the courage and just the willingness and the desire and passion for what you do has the power to probably change this kid's life in your asking.
Incredible.
Because no one else probably would have ever asked.
No, I know for a fact that no one else would have asked him. And he was really high energy. And, years ago, I was in Chicago and I was working with a program that was working with inner city students. And a lot of those children don't have the opportunity for this type of thing. And the teachers were telling me about this one certain little boy who they're like warning me that he was going to be a terror for me. And he was amazing. He was like the same as a kid. He just wanted that opportunity to move. And same with this little boy. There were moments that he was unsure, and I was like, "Come on, let's do this." And he was my partner. Like, it was a lot of inclusion that made it a special experience for him. But I mean, it definitely was a change in his life that he did not see coming today, nor did I.
Oh, cool. I love that. That is a great go for no story.
The other part of that story that I think is really cool is that, well, how old is he?
10.
Okay. So this is what I love about children, Rachel. And I love the whole, like, I think kids are like the best salespeople. And there's a whole, bunch of things I say about that. But what I think is also cool is that he was open to saying yes, which is sort of what I was alluding to before, like the fear of saying yes to things, because the fear of saying yes to something that You're afraid you got to make a commitment. You're afraid that you have to succeed. You're afraid that how you're going to look. Like I see this in improv based training that we do, is that fear of saying yes, that such as yes and versus the yes but piece of it. And here's a kid who's like, okay. And as adults, we lose that.
Yeah. And little did I know that his biggest idol on the planet is Michael Jackson. And when I found him some shoes, which I specifically found him like black jazz shoes because I wasn't going to give him pink ballet shoes, he was like, these are like Michael Jackson shoes. He was like, it just was crazy. He just was like mind blown that he could be that. And I'm like, heck yeah. So crazy. It was special at the end of a very long day. It was good.
That is an awesome story.
Yeah.
There's so many questions I want to ask you. And I like asking origin stories because I want to know, you said at that time when you wrote it, which is 20 years ago, right? 21 years ago, right? It was a thing to go for no. I've got one comment and then a question. Here's my comment, which for everybody listening, because you said it, it's like it was an overnight success in 10 years. This is another big thing where people look at successful people and like, oh my gosh, you're so successful. Like it's been a work in progress. It didn't happen overnight. And I think this is a really good lesson to anybody building anything, right? You wrote this book and it just kind of didn't do anything for you for 8 years and then didn't hit the best-selling list for 10 years. Could you imagine if you had abandoned that?
Oh, yeah.
What would have happened?
Right.
And so such a long game. I say that all the time to Rachel when we're like, why are we podcasting? Right? Because it's a long game. I've always said it. We're not going to, not that we're trying to get famous overnight, but we can't just produce a podcast and think like that's going to change our lives, in a big way. It's going to be incremental changes along the way. So it's just a comment on that for everybody to think about. Anything that you're working towards that's worth it, you have to put the time in and you have to be patient. So now backing up a little bit, what was the inspiration to get the book written in the first place?
So we, and I don't know exactly how Richard, my husband, kind of knew this intuitively, but he decided that in order to launch a speaking and training company, that you had to have a book. That he knew even back before, again, Amazon, that the book would be the door opener. It would be the thing that would, just people would they would read it, they would hire us, whatever. So, that was really kind of the reason. And we actually wrote 2 other books even before Go for No, and those were for the industry that we were working in, which was retail. But we also knew that we weren't going to sit around and wait for a publishing deal. Like, talk about rejection. We didn't have time for that kind of rejection. Not that we didn't have the desire to do it. We just knew that sitting around waiting for a publisher to say yes to us was not our vision. We said, and he said, we just published it ourselves. And we literally, that's what we did. We figured out how to print, how to publish. And then we printed these books and sent them to prospects that could hire us to speak.
So it was a business card, basically a calling card to get in the door back in the day when it was way harder to publish a book. Yeah.
And kind of that, anything that's hard to do, and I put this in the category of doing, whether it's a show on YouTube or a podcast, anything where there's like a barrier to entry. I know people probably think like, oh, podcasts, everybody's doing it. There's a lot of people who are not doing it because it is hard, especially to do it consistently and to do it well and all of that stuff. So there is kind of this more rarefied air. And with books, I think it's probably more prevalent today because of the technology we have, and the fact that you literally can go on Amazon and you could cobble together a cover yourself, design the book cover yourself, upload a PDF document, and have a book, where it was a lot more difficult then. So the fact that we pushed through that obstacle, and then we had this book where we could send it to people, our competition was very limited. We really, if you think about it, we didn't really have competition in the area of quote unquote self-published authors, because it wasn't really a thing back then. It was either you were like Jeffrey Gitomer and you were published and you were in the airport bookstore. Well, we weren't going to even compete with that. That wasn't even a competitor. So we had no competitors.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I'm here to tell you, having published 2 books on Amazon, that it's not as hard as what you did for sure, Andrea, but it's definitely hard as well. Like, it's got its challenges. I had a lot of challenges doing that. And it's kind of this, like you said, with podcasts, is that it's proof that you have the perseverance to learn how to do something new and hard and actually finish it. Because even people like Gina's got a great book coming soon, and
there it is.
I couldn't help it. I do it every time, Andrea.
I was gonna say, wow, you guys make it sound so easy.
Yeah,
go on.
Gina's
Rachel.
book is going to be amazing, and but there's so many people. Think of how many people out there that you've talked to, because I know I've talked to a lot of people as well, that don't ever even get started because it's just too hard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Richard and I have talked for years about, we should do a podcast, like so many people say. And then like to us, and this just has to do with your comfort zone, I think, and you get comfortable. And Rachel, I know you're right. I mean, Amazon, it's not as easy as I make it sound. But the funny thing is, when you do it enough, like to me, it's so easy. It's just so easy. But you tell me, like, have a podcast up tomorrow, I'm telling you no.
Yeah.
I can't.
Gina can help you with that too. She's quite adept at creating podcasts.
Well, but this is a really good point. And this is about the pursuit of mastery, right? Like, once you start pursuing something, getting good at it, it does become really easy. And so there are people, like, look at Jeb. He's on book 25,000. I don't know. I've lost track.
14. He's on 15 now. He's written 14.
I lost track. But it's now a habit for him. And so it gets easier. Podcasting for me, I can do in my sleep. Right? Where other people are like, I can't even wrap my head around it. But the first time I started looking at how to do it, I couldn't wrap my head around it. It hurt my head. I'm not a tech person. I hired someone to help me. Ooh, I just got an epiphany.
That's what I was trying to do there, Gina, is like,
I
help you out with
someone to help
Andrea.
me. Maybe I could hire someone to help me. Oh, man. Look at that. I just taught myself a lesson.
There you go.
Anyway.
For sure.
Yeah. So we can help you, Andrea, if you guys want a podcast. What?
And, the interesting thing about podcasts, and what would be so great about you and Richard having one, Andrea, is that there's audio books. Like, there's probably, if you haven't done an audio version of Go for No, then there's that option. But people want to hear what you have to say about all that. Like, in the way that individual said, I'd really love to sit down and talk to Andrea, like, because they want to hear more about how did you come up with it, and what else, and how else can you help me go for no, because I'm still afraid, and all those kinds of things. And so people love to hear that when they're driving, and it's just there's so much value to it.
I know. I know. I hear you.
And you have so much content.
We do.
Let's not get into all of that.
All right. Well, we won't put the pressure. We won't put the pressure on you.
Moving right along. Moving off of podcast and back to Andrea.
I have a question. Hold on. Let me pull it up. Okay. I need to hear the story behind. At the age of 8, she called George Lucas to see if she could work with him on future movies.
I did do that. And I told this story at Outbound, the one I always say last year in 2019. Mm-hmm. And the story is that, well, first of all, when I was young, dating myself, we had one of these big giant VHS players. We had like one of the early ones. It was huge. It was like the size of a suitcase.
Yeah, I remember.
And yeah, somehow we got a hold of a bootleg copy of Star Wars because it had only been out for a couple years. But I mean, those videos weren't even, there was no even Blockbuster or tape stores or anything. So anyway, long story short, I watched this movie over and over again. Became my absolute, I was obsessed with Star Wars. And one day a family friend, and I was like 7, 8 years old, a family friend came over and said, we were talking about this and said, well, I happen to have the personal office number to George Lucas, who's the, creator, producer of Star Wars. Do you want the number? And I was like, yes, give it to me. I'm thinking now in my little brain, I'm thinking that George Lucas needs some inspiration from someone young, right? He's older, he's an adult, he needs some new, fresh ideas. And I had this fantasy. I was like, I could work with him, and I would sit on a little typewriter and type titles for movies and think of ideas and things like that I would pitch to him. So it must have been summer vacation or something like that, because I remember it was during the day, and I finally kind of gathered up the courage to call, and I dialed the number, and a woman answered and said, George Lucas's office. And I said, hi, is George there? And she very clearly could tell it was a child, I'm sure, and she said, can I tell him who's calling? And I said, yeah, this is Andrea. And then she said, right. And then she said, well, can I tell him what this is regarding? And I said, oh, yeah, well, I love Star Wars. I've watched it a million times, and I really want to work with George Lucas. And, but I wanted to talk to him and see if I could, if we could, I don't know, who knows what I came up with, collaborate. In my own words. I'm sure I didn't use that word at 8, but that was fundamentally the idea. And she said, well, I have just the thing for you. We have this, we have the George Lucas fan club, and I will help you get signed up, and it will help you keep in touch with George's work, and you'll get notices and special things will come in the mail to you. And I realized that I was getting the brush off, right? But at age 8, even though I understood how to call, I certainly wasn't good at handling objections at that time, certainly wasn't good at handling no. So I gave her my address, and she signed me up, and she was really nice and sweet. And I hung up, and that was pretty much the end of it, until a couple years ago, I was talking to my mom about this, and we were talking about, I said, isn't that funny? Like, I called George Lucas and everything, haha. And she said, yeah, but do you remember what you did afterwards? And I said, no, what are you talking about? I hung up, and that was the end of it, right? I went on with my life. I didn't get to work with them. And she said, oh no, Andrea, you threw the biggest screaming fit of your life. You were inconsolable. You were crying. You were laying on the floor. She said, I had never in my life slapped you. She goes, I had to slap you across the face just to get your attention, just to calm you down. You were you were out of control. And I said, really? I don't even remember that. I literally must have I blocked it out. I have no memory of being that way. And so I tell this story, you guys, to audiences a lot. 1, because obviously it's kind of a funny go for no story. 2, it is a demonstration of what we call going for a big no, like going for something that's just completely outrageous. And 3, also just goes to show you the emotional effects of rejection. And yes, I was 8, but I still took it very, very hard. And we all tend to do that.
I love this story.
Talk about chutzpah, man.
I love this story. Okay, so several things went through my mind. The first thing that went through my mind was, I am hiring an 8-year-old to make my cold calls.
Right?
like that, just like that, get, like she said, a chutzpah of hi, is George there? It's Andrea.
I've got a whole dance school full of them that some of them are pretty wide open, and they'd probably do it. That kid this morning, Joshua, would do it. in a heartbeat.
Well, I think kids are right on the, like, especially at that age, you are right on the line of that. And I don't have kids, so this is just my perception of having been one a long time ago, but kind of what I observe with my friends' kids and family kids. There's like this line where when they're really young, you know, they're so tenacious and they're just so persistent and they ask why all the time, and they don't take no, like they really don't take no. And then I think when you start to become a little bit more self-aware and you are aware of judgment in that 7, 8, 9 range, and I think it kind of varies, right? That then all of a sudden you realize when you are being rejected. And then of course, when we hit like the teenage years, the 11, 12, then there's complete awareness of judgment and then it's almost like we get terrified of being rejected. But that's, you know, that's a whole other thing. That goes back to Rachel, you saying about the tribe. I mean, talk about tribes, right? Then you're in school and all of that. So it's an interesting dynamic, but kids definitely have that lack of fear and caring of, oh, I could make a fool out of myself. That never crossed my mind, right? That I could make a fool out of myself. Right. Today, obviously it would. That would be my first thought.
And now a word from our fabulous sponsor, Jeb Blunt at Sales Gravy.
Hi, this is Jeb Blunt. There's a reason why thousands of sales professionals and top companies across the globe hone their sales skills at Sales Gravy University. You see, Sales Gravy University is different than most learning platforms. First, we have live courses taught in a virtual classroom by our master trainers that start almost every single day. And our e-learning platform is populated with hundreds of hours of sales training content produced by some of the top sales trainers in the world, including Gina's spontaneous selling course, which is worth checking out. Now, I've got some good news. If you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy University, if you're a new user, you can take your very first course for free. That's any course on the platform, absolutely free. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com, or click the e-learning tab in the top menu at salesgravy.com. Pick out your course, and when you check out, use coupon code FREECOURSE to get that course for free. That is free course to get your very first course for free.
Speaking of Sales Gravy University, go check out salesgravy.university and see some of the courses that I'm teaching. Just scroll through the university and click on them and you will find me and sign up. I'd love to have you there. You know, we're wired, right? We know that we're wired for this fear of rejection, right? We know it's in our DNA for survival. It is interesting, though, how kids don't really have it. Even though we're all wired for it, something happens. There's a switch where all of a sudden, fear of rejection becomes very prevalent.
I think parents teach it to them.
Yeah.
I think parents teach it to them because I, as you were telling that story, just the end part of it just now, Andrea, I was thinking of when I've got this photograph of me and I was real young, and we were at Disney World and Prince Charming came by with Cinderella. And I marched right up to Prince Charming and said, "Can I have a kiss, please?" And he gave me a kiss on the cheek. I have a picture of it. I mean, and I think that we learn it. And I think there's a lot of parents we don't know that we're doing it. But when we go, "Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't bother him. Mm-hmm. Oh, don't do that." You know, that's the part that kids become aware, because we learn the most from our parents. Parents are the ones that kids grasp the most from, whether directly or indirectly. And I was just listening to, I'm really into Tim Grover right now, and has all these books out right now, Winning and Relentless. And he talks about that when I was listening this morning, about when you're young, you don't care. You're running around with all different outfits on and you're singing happy birthday to whoever, until parents are like, "Stop doing that. It's nobody's birthday. Like, you can't wear 2 different shoes. You come inside, stop doing that." And I think that's partially where we learn to be worried about what people think about us.
Yeah, that's really true. That's really true. And the intention is not a bad one. We just, because I think that if we were, if you would say that to an adult, they wouldn't internalize it like, but yeah, the message is like, tamp it down and don't be so bold.
Don't be obvious. Don't stand out.
Yeah.
Don't draw attention to yourself.
Don't bother. Don't interrupt people. Don't bother people.
Right.
And it all comes down to that parent, that adult, being more concerned about how people are perceiving them as adults and parents.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And that is just kind of how we all are. And again, I mean, it's, that parents have an intention of like the end goal is to raise someone who, I guess you'd say, fits into society, quote unquote, right? Who is successful, who is accepted. Like, I don't want my child to be hated by everybody, so I'm going to put them in the box. And at least I know that if they fit in the box, they'll be okay. They'll be safe.
Ooh, that makes me want to cry.
Why?
Because I hope that I don't. Because honestly, like, as you know, Gina, it's taken me until recently to realize that I've been trying to be in the box. And when I just threw the box to the side and said, I'm just going to be who I am and wear crazy outfits and do what I want to do and be bold, that I'm much happier that way. And I was not happy trying to fit in this box. And so I hope that I am not teaching my child to be in a box. But again, as you just said, Andrea, it's almost like a safety thing, because we don't want our child to be kicked out of the tribe either. We want them to be accepted in the tribe. And let me tell you what, I have a kid, and as much as I try to be the best parent I can, it's a daily, like, what the heck am I doing kind of fest. Like, what do I do with this? Like, who is this person? What do I do? Am I doing this all wrong? Like, did I do everything wrong? And like, I think everyone who is a mom of a human child has gone through a moment of just crying their eyes out that I've completely failed. And I've got a great kid, but at the same time, every once in a while, I'm like, I've completely done everything wrong.
I can imagine. I mean, I really can imagine. And I think you're amazing because, I don't trust myself around a plant. So
me neither. I just killed 2 plants recently.
Well, and then, it goes back to the simplicity of, like, go for no. The concept is so simple. It's just so simple. Just go for it. Who cares if they say no? It's so simple. And yet it's so hard for people to get past all of their hangups and their fears. And parenting is so simple. You just have to love them and make sure that they have their basic needs met and that they're loved and safe. Like, that's just really all you have to do. Because there's a million ways to screw up a child. But yet it's so hard.
Yeah.
I love going for no. It's a game to me. It is a hobby. It is a high. It is like, it's a sport. I love going for no because I like to see the reaction on people's faces. Like, I just coached a client on this, something similar to this. There's one account he's been trying to get and he can't, and he's just not getting it. And they're, it's always a bid process and the other vendor's getting it. And I said, well, why do you think the other vendor's getting it? He's like, I just think it's the relationship. I said, okay, well, let's work on some things you can do to do more relationship building. I said, why don't you do this? Why don't you ask him why you haven't been getting the jobs? He's like, really? I said, yeah. He's like, that's not pushy or rude. I'm like, no, just say, hey, I would love your feedback on what I could do better, what our company could do better, because we really want to work with you. Could you give me some feedback on what we're not doing? I said, this is what's going to happen. It's such a disrupt. They're not going to expect that question. Because he's like, well, I've asked, and they're like, oh, we gave the job to someone else. I go, did you ask the next question of why? well, no. I'm like, I guarantee you, if you ask that question, they're going to be so thrown off. They're going to be like, because they're going to say something because they didn't expect the question. And what's the worst thing that can happen? Can't tell you why. They don't want to do that because then they're going to feel like they look stupid. They're going to say something to you. So that's like the homework I gave him was like, just go do it. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I like to do these little things like in my personal life. We were in Niagara Falls last week and they have these, trolleys you can jump on and off. Mm-hmm. But you were supposed to buy a wristband at like some booth. And now we weren't near the booth. And I'm like, let's go see if we can get on it. And my significant other's son goes, you can't do that. You have to go buy it at the booth. And I'm like, we don't know for sure. I'm like, let's just ask. What's the worst thing? Like, I'm like, I know they're going to say no, but I still went and asked. They said no. But it didn't hurt to ask.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. I encourage people, inevitably people when I'm on a podcast or something like this. So you guys can't do this. At the end, they say like, is there any last words of advice? And I always say, look, try this in your personal life. Just go for no in your personal life. Like when you're out somewhere or when the opportunity arises, just like that situation, Gina. I mean, I remember I don't know why I was like at Walmart. This was a while ago. And I got to the front and to the cashier and I hadn't heard a no in a long time. Like I hadn't been practicing. I hadn't been going for no. So I get to the front and I said, so are there any like coupons or discounts? I swear the cashier looked like she was going to jump over the counter and strangle me. She goes, you're at Walmart. And I went, you're right. Okay. All right. Here's my credit card. Let's move. I'm leaving.
Moving right along.
Moving on. Yes.
But it is a muscle, I think, that you've got to work. As you were saying, Andrea, you just said you hadn't practiced it in a while. And I think that I've actually found more fun in going for no, especially after studying and learning all of the frameworks that Jeb presents in Sales Gravy. It gives me confidence and I want to practice it more. So I want to go for no more. And then when I have these frameworks, I feel more confident to just not care because I know it's going to work after a while. There's a guy, and I'm sure you know who he is, Andrea, that he had a TED talk about he was going for no. And he was asking all these crazy things like, can I play soccer in your yard? And can I have a hamburger refill? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
So that's Jia Zhang.
Yeah.
And he wrote the book Rejection Proof, but keep going.
Yeah. So it's very similar. He must have read Go for No because like he had to have read it. And it's just a testament to the fact that if you don't go for no, there's so many things you could have been missing out on. You're missing out on the yes that's gonna show up eventually when you go for no, which is like the whole point of what you and Richard have put together in this great little book is like you can't get to yes if you aren't willing to put up with some no's. So you might as well just get cozy with it.
Absolutely.
Have you seen the video that he does on his TEDx talk? I think it's the TEDx talk where he presents that.
And and the TEDx talk is about the one go for no ask that he did. And I believe he did 100.
Yeah,
that was the
100.
goal.
Yeah.
And it was about when he was at a Krispy Kreme. And he asked them to do these Krispy Kreme donuts in the form of the Olympic symbol. And the girl behind the counter was like, okay. And then this video went completely crazy. I remember when he was doing that, he was literally filming videos every day on YouTube, putting it out every day, going out and doing something. And he was actually asking for suggestions. And I have to tell you, I keep an eagle eye out for anybody who's talking about rejection. So when I heard about this, I was completely enamored. I thought it was genius, of course. It was actually he started this based on a game that a guy had created in Canada called Rejection Therapy. And it was kind of a way to gamify this idea of desensitizing yourself to hearing no. And so, yeah, this whole thing changed Ja's life. And, he ended up writing a book and everything. I remember my suggestion to him was because he was asking, like, I need ideas. Like, how can I hear no? I told him to ask a cop if he could sit in the front seat of the car. So that was my idea. I don't know if he did that one. I think he did. I think he did something with a cop.
It's so crazy. And
I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask to sit in the front seat of a cop car.
I love, I want to go back to something that you said, Gina, which is that you look at go for no almost as a sport.
Yeah.
And I just love that concept because I think what a lot of people hold on to is that no is so scary and bad. And what you guys with your book, Andrea, are trying to prove is that it's not bad, it's good. It's kind of like failure is a requirement for success rather than a deterrent for success. And the more you can just make it a sport or like a game and all the things like Gina said, it removes a little bit of the sting out of it. Now, if you get like a pretty harsh rejection, then it still sucks, but it's going to suck less if you're like, well, that was kind of unexpected. Okay. Instead of like, oh God, they hate me, I'm terrible. It's all about something's wrong with me. It just to really sink your teeth into the fact that no is the pathway to yes.
And I think if you go in with the expectation of a no, and I'm not saying being negative, right? I mean, positively. I talk about this as one of the improv tenets that we teach. I don't say fail forward or embrace failure. I say solicit failure. And people are like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, actually look to break something. Actually look for the where it is going to go wrong, or where you can anticipate it going wrong, or actually making it go wrong. Because when you break it, then you can rebuild it and you can see where the weak spots are in the break. And just like go after it, go after the failure. That to me, I mean, we do that on stage all the time as performers. I guess it's a little bit different for us as improv performers. We know that when we fail on stage, the audience laughs. We are constantly rewarded. This just came to me just in this moment. We are constantly rewarded on stage for failing. There's a concept.
Ooh.
So my visualization, Gina, is you as Katniss Everdeen, right, from the Hunger Games.
Uh-huh.
But
I've heard this before. I don't know.
But go for no. So like that's the visualization, right? You're in your fatigues and you're you're in the Hunger Games, but you're going for no. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of great quotes from comedians about failure. I was just looking at some of them. I mean, they all talk about it. In order to test out your material, you've got to be willing to bomb on stage and see what works and what doesn't. And then pretty soon you collect, 45 perfect minutes. But before that, I mean, you are guaranteed to fail.
Yeah. And you're constantly building resilience. Constantly. Like you do become rejection proof. You're like, all right, someone's not going to like me tonight.
Well, I'm thinking, first of all, that sounds like the most horrible, terrifying thing ever, is to be a comedian out there bombing material. Like, oh God.
It's actually quite liberating, seriously.
I think that there's probably some salespeople listening to this right now that there's an account or a prospect that they think is completely out of their reach. And I would encourage them to go for that no. Like, go big. Go George Lucas big, like Andrea did. Because that's going to build that rejection-proof thing a lot better, faster than a bunch of little ones. And the crazy thing is, like, what if they say yes? I think it's there's like an online legal service company that came about right after the dot-com bubble burst. And the guy, I wish I could remember it right now. It's like a huge one. And the whole thing was the guy wanted to call this major prospect. And he was like, I'm just going to go for no. And he called like kind of late at night because he just assumed he was going to get the answering machine. And the guy picked up. And so he did better than me when Jeb picked up for me. That story I told you, Gina. He pitched his idea and the guy was like, this is the greatest idea. And boom, off it went. And it was whatever it is, the biggest legal document company that you can get online. Like you can go online and get legal documents. That's the company. That's the story.
Is that like LegalZoom?
I think maybe it's LegalZoom, but that I heard that story somewhere along the way that he was like, why not? Let's call this guy. I mean, he's never going to pick up. He's not at the office. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'll just call him. And the guy was there and everybody had left for the day and he picked up and the opportunity just showed up for the greatest thing ever to happen for this guy. Just because he was willing to go for no. Now he's kind of like chickening out in the way by calling it 10 o'clock at night, but maybe 10 o'clock at night might be where you score.
I love that. That is a great story.
I actually almost called a prospect last night at 7:30 at night because I'm like, he's going to think I'm crazy. I ended up not doing it because I was in the car. And bottom line, I got an appointment with him. We actually connected today and I got the appointment. But I'm like, well, maybe that'll completely disrupt him if I call him at 7:30 at night. What could be so wrong with that?
I think if you get a gut feeling about somebody that you should call, then you should call them right then. Because right now, especially thanks to the pandemic, people work really weird off hours and because they can, and anything goes.
Well,
that's a really good point. Inspiration before you talk yourself out of it.
Right.
And this brings it all full circle as we wrap up the show. You know, at the beginning of this, we started talking about imposter syndrome and not wanting to disappoint people and people watching us, as we, in some people's minds, they're rock stars to them, right? Well, because we have a podcast or we've written a book or whatever it is, they admire us in some way. And then they almost feel like we're untouchable. And we're like, what, me over here? What, you think I'm a big deal? I don't think I'm a big deal. And meanwhile, people are afraid to approach. And we're just sitting back going, yeah, come on and approach. Come on. So again, to wrap up this whole concept, like if you want something or you are trying to reach somebody and you think they're unapproachable or unattainable, they're probably sitting back going, please approach me. Anybody, don't put me on such a pedestal. You hear those stories about like the really good looking girl or the really good looking guy. And I've heard the story where, I mean, it's not me, but the beautiful people who are lonely because nobody will ask them out.
That's how Felix got me. He asked me out and he was like, I can't believe you said yes. And I'm like, that's because nobody has ever asked me out since I got divorced. Like literally no one. And he still can't believe that story, but I'm like, It's true. You asked. And also, before we do our closing questions with you, Andrea, true story also, I went through when we were heading towards Outbound and reached out via LinkedIn to every speaker just to create a connection. You were the last one that I reached out to because you were such a rock star to me that I was like, she'll never answer.
Oh.
Never answer the likes of me. And when you did, I was like, the go for no lady.
We're all kind of geeks like that, no matter where we are in our career. We're like,
that's so funny. And now like all like we've hung out backstage and all my flaws.
Oh, no, I know how smart you guys are, and I appreciate you. And we are so glad to know you. And now we're going to shake you up a little bit with these closing questions. A little bit.
But don't ask her the advice question because she already told us,
Yes, I picked up on that. I was listening. But I will ask you this. What is your definition, Andrea, for the word sexy?
Okay. I thought about it because I thought, I wonder if that question is coming. I wonder if they're going to ask me this, because I was asked on stage at Outbound and I said confidence, and then I thought, I'm not going to give the same answer this time. So my next level definition is passion. And I can't remember if somebody said that as well, but I don't know what I've been seeing lately, just people online talking about different subjects, and man, if they are super passionate, it's just so compelling. And it doesn't matter. The subject could be something that I have zero interest in. And then all of a sudden that person's passion is so contagious. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that they're building a brick wall, and it just so passionate.
Yeah. And Rachel, before you go on, I just want to put this back to both of you. You both have exhibited that, like Rachel with that, asking that boy to, I wanted to say this earlier, you did it with such passion and excitement. You were passionate and excited about that little boy taking ballet, just as passionate as Andrea was about calling George Lucas. So I think that's pretty cool.
All right. I'll skip the advice one, but I'll move to this one. Is there any advice, Andrea, that you wish you had been given?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I guess it would just have been, well, this is really a tactical, boring piece of advice, but it is to don't let my fear of technology hold me back, and embrace things faster. So I just be that's probably the thing that I've been the slowest on, is hesitant to change. Let's put it that way.
I say go for it. Go for the big no of nope, you don't got this yet.
That's right. Nope, it's not going to work.
Love it. It's been so awesome having you on the show.
I was so looking forward to it after you said we were going to get together after Outbound. So you guys are so much fun to talk to. We could do it all day long.
Yeah. And before we let you go, what is the best way for our listeners, our warners? I'm going to say that because people are like, what's a warner? So now I'm going to start to say, for our listeners, the warners, what is the best way for them to connect with you, get a hold of you, call you on the phone like you called George Lucas? What are all the ways?
If you track down my number, then yes, I will pick up. But you have to track it down.
I like it.
Right. So I'm luckily well branded. So if you type in Go for No into the interweb, I definitely will pop up. So it's at Go for No on Twitter and Instagram, and goforno.com.
And you have lots of followers on social media, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's a rejection. It's universal. So,
and I can definitely vouch that it's a great book. It's a easy read. It's not an overwhelming read. It's a really simple concept, and you will be inspired. It's definitely helped me go for no. So go get it.
Awesome. Once again, thanks to Andrea for being on this episode of The Women Your Mother Warns You About, sponsored by Sales Gravy. For more information about our show, you can go to womenyourmotherwarnsyouabout.com. And we are on all the social what's, Rachel? Because I screwed this up last time.
It's called social media. Just type in at Women Your Mother Warns You About in all the places, and you'll find us.
If you found this show valuable today, please share it with a friend and give us a rating and review. If you have not done that, that would be cool. And we're out of here. Anything else, Rachel? Am I forgetting?
Nope. Thanks for listening.
Bye, Warners.
This really will get serious soon.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I don't think anybody wants it to be serious.